For people who are interested in remote work, I have noticed that there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially on YouTube. There is a lot of garbage advice. Now, I have worked at all the different types of roles like contracting, freelancing, consulting, and full-time roles. I've also worked with small startups. I was the 19th engineer at WhatsApp. And then after the acquisition, I became the hiring manager for Meta, where I've also worked in the US office and in London. So today I want to help you break down the misconceptions about finding remote work, especially in the US, and help you find a realistic path for yourself. So first, I'm gonna break down the different types of remote works, and I'll share the pros and cons for each type. And stick around till the end of the video because I'm going to share which of these routes would be the most realistic way to find remote works in the US. So what are the differences between contractor, freelance, and full-time work? There's a lot of similarities between contractor and freelance work. In a sense, you're pretty much running your own business like your own boss. You have to manage your own projects. You have to find your own clients. And you're going to be spending a lot of time doing a lot of business operation type of work, which can be a pro or con depending on your personality and preferences, right? If you like autonomy and flexibility, it could be a good thing. But if you are the type of person who drives more with structure and guideline, this could be a difficult role. Even though both roles do offer the flexibility and ability to manage your own time, there are some key differences. Contractors typically work on longer term projects like 6 to 12 months projects, and the work can be more similar to a full-time employee than the freelance work, because freelance projects usually tend to be more project oriented. You're delivering a project, a particular scope, and the project term tends to be shorter too. It could be weeks or even days. For both contractor and freelance roles, once you gain more experience, you're going to have a lot more flexibility. You get to choose your own clients. Maybe you get to even be selective about what type of projects that you take on. But when you're first getting started, it might take you some time to build up your clientele or portfolio, and it might be harder to get clients in the beginning. The workload could be like hit or miss too. You might get a ton of work for a period of time, and then for a while, you might not get any work. Being your own boss sounds nice, but once you try it out, it's a lot of responsibilities. Finding your own clients and managing taxes and communicating with clients, it can be stressful. Okay, so how is that different from a full-time job? So for full-time roles, it's pretty self-explanatory. You get a salary, you get a W-2, and the company pays for your health benefit, and you get all the perks. If you work for any of the Silicon Valley tech companies, you probably get the free lunches, the micro kitchen snacks, gym benefits. Sometimes you even get like massages, laptops, phones, all the good stuff. I guess I didn't really understand the full differences between contracting and full-time until I got my first job at IBM working as a consultant. So out of school, my first job was working as a full-time consultant, which means that I did get a W-2 even though I was working with multiple clients. My projects would usually tend to be longer term. I think the shortest was like 6 months, and they kept getting extended because you can get renewed over and over and over. So even though I was a W-2 full-time employee working on a project, within the same project, you partner with other independent contractors. And these usually tend to be senior people with a lot of experience. They usually charge a much higher hourly rate. The health insurance, vacation days, sick days, those all come out of their own expenses. Even though the hourly rate for an independent contractor might be a little bit higher, once you subtract all the expenses, it's pretty similar to a W-2 employee, usually if you're comparing the same levels. So in terms of money, I don't think it's a big difference. The difference would be your preferences on if you like to pay for your own expenses or not. I guess what is more different is the growth opportunity that you get as a contractor versus a full-time employee, because as a contractor, you don't get any of the mentorships or the training that you would get as a full-time employee. Like for Facebook, they put you on onboarding, and there's a lot of leadership classes that you can take. And you also get a dedicated manager who's helping you with your career development. And especially if you're someone starting out brand new in your career, you're gonna need a lot of support. There's something called a Dunning-Kruger effect. I was reading about it in this book, Think Again by Adam Grant. It's basically when new people, their knowledge is so limited that they don't even know all the things that they don't know. So when you're new and coming out of college, you probably don't even know what you don't know, and you're going to need a lot of mentorship and guidance from experienced people. And best way to get that is to work as a full-time employee. As a junior engineer, it is going to be a little bit more challenging to find contract or freelance work. And even if you do find them, because you don't get the growth or the training support or the guidance and the mentorship, it's going to be hard for you to grow your career. And if you are set on finding a remote role for yourself, I want you to just make sure that you understand the pros and cons and the different routes of finding the remote roles. Consider the trade-off between the flexibility and the growth opportunities. And lastly, there are a lot of differences in terms of the remote work opportunities. There's a lot of tax and visa issues, and I'm not an accountant or an immigration lawyer, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. But from working as a hiring manager at Facebook, now Meta, I do know that most tech companies will not hire remote international software engineers. Meaning if you get hired as a full-time W-2 engineer in the US, you have to live in the US and have visa for the US. And this is not like a evil large corporation kind of thing, but that's just like how the law works. Sometimes startups can usually get away with it. So the way it works is that in order to hire someone as a W-2 full-time employee, you need to have an entity in that country. So let's say that I am a founder and I want to hire someone in China. I can either hire that person as a contractor, or if I want to hire them as a full-time employee, I need to have a business entity in China. For companies like Meta, they do have international business entities. When you look at their website, you will find a list of countries that you can work remotely. I'll read the quote from the Meta website. Meta now offers 100% remote roles for a select number of our job postings. Anyone hired for a remote role must work from an area located in that role's specific region. And I've also worked as a hiring manager in London for Meta. And in order to work remotely at Meta London, you have to live in UK. And usually big tech companies don't hire contractors, software engineers, and there's a reason for that. You may have seen the worker misclassification lawsuits on the news. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but pretty much this is when contractors come together and sue the tech companies because they were hired as an independent contractor, but doing the same work as a full-time employee, which can be considered a misclassification. And that's part of the reason why tech companies generally don't hire software engineers as contractors. But another reason is also quality control. Companies need to make sure the qualities meet their standards. And it's hard to do that with contractors, especially if they're not in the office. But there are roles that big tech companies do outsource, so let me read them to you. There are roles like content moderation for flagging inappropriate content, customer support, that's self-explanatory, data annotation and labeling, this is for training machine learning models, creative services like graphic design, video editing, content creation, these are commonly outsourced with freelancers and agencies. Now, if you are looking for a job, I have a video on how to write an ATS-friendly resume, so check out this video. Otherwise, YouTube thinks that you should watch this one next.